Welcome to the Recycle Podcast, where we discuss everyday issues from a mental health perspective. We are your hosts,
Dr. LaFonya Jones,
Dr. Rashonda Strickland,
and Dr. Nichelle Wall. Now, don't get it twisted. We're not going to be your stereotypical therapist.
What we will be is down to earth, informative, a little spicy, and vulnerable.
All right, interns, turn up the volume, grab your pen and paper. It's supervision time. As a reminder, this podcast is not meant to take the place of a relationship with a licensed mental health professional.
Welcome back to Session 7, Lines in the Sand.
Okay, interns, today we're going to talk about boundaries. Today what we're going to do is try to give you all some understanding of what boundaries are, and we may give you some of what they are not. So boundaries are, they define us, you know. Would y'all agree with that? They define us?
I think they define parameters of what is and is not acceptable for a person. And they kind of give a person a guideline on how to operate.
I agree with that. I definitely think your boundary becomes the edge where you love yourself and before you allow somebody else to hurt you.
That's a good point. And I will add to that by saying that they define what is me and what is not me. Okay.
Can you expand on what you mean by that?
Oh, of course. So when I say they define what is me, I'm making it clear that this is what I like. And what is not me is I don't like that.
So what's acceptable?
Yes. You know, I'm using my voice to tell you what I am going to accept and what I'm not going to accept.
Okay. I think one of the things that I tell my clients a lot is imagine yourself in the center of several circles. And so as you go further out, the circles obviously get bigger, but you're in the center of all of them. And so the circle that is around you first, that's a circle that only you and whatever your higher power can be in. No one else can ever enter that circle. And then from there, you have your inner circle of people, your support system, and then you keep going out from there. But when you meet someone new, they have to start in the outer circle so you can see them coming. You get the opportunity to observe them, figure out what their character is. Does that mesh well with me? Do I mesh well with them? And as you observe them longer and longer, they can get closer and closer, but nobody should ever be in that inner circle with you.
I like that
I
illustration.
Do too. Yes, I do too. And because they're closer and closer, there should always be a distinction of where I end and where you begin.
Yes. Don't be bleeding over here. I'm not bleeding over here.
Please don't. I don't like it. I don't like that.
Yeah, I usually talk with my clients about you are your own gatekeeper.
Yes.
So, you know, I'm a visual person like that when I'm explaining stuff to my clients. So I kind of give it to them like, you know, it's almost like when you're going to the stadium. You know, there is a gatekeeper that allows certain people in. They check the bags and make sure all the stuff in there is appropriate. And then some like, nope, you can't come in here. You can't bring that in here. You know, that's dangerous. So you are essentially the gatekeeper to yourself.
Yeah, I like that.
I do too.
And don't mistake boundaries with walls. There's a huge difference.
Because the boundaries are not walls.
They aren't. Like boundaries are firm, of course, but you can see through them. You know what's coming. You know what's going. Walls, whatever is on the other side of the wall, good, bad, indifferent, stays over there, and whatever is trapped over in with you stays with you. And so typically people who build walls are people who still need to be healed.
Yes. And a part of the healing and things like that is boundaries help you to take responsibility for you. and what's yours and what's not yours.
How you're showing up.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And it's a sense of freedom when you can take that responsibility.
Yeah. I would piggyback on that and say something that Dr. Jones and we have a couple in common, and the person that I work with, he confuses boundaries with control. So that would be my piggyback to you, that boundaries they're not control either.
Nope.
You know, the person, if used correctly, let me say that, because boundaries can be used as a form of punishment or a form of control of another person.
Manipulation.
Yes.
See, great minds think alike.
Yes.
But if they're used in an appropriate way, that's not what's going to happen. The other person is not going to feel like you're controlling them or that you're gaslighting them or, you know, just trying to. Oh, I almost cussed again. My mama said something about that last week.
My mama said.
Don't get a whooping.
I know. I will say mind freaked.
I like it.
You know, by the other person.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you know what? The thing is, the person that, like you said, your person feels like they're trying to control, but then my person feels like they're being mean.
But I think that goes back, if we're talking about y'all's couple, that goes back to somebody in that couple still does not have their boundaries in the correct place.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, because you're not necessarily supposed to feel comfortable with somebody else's boundaries because they're theirs. You have to ask yourself, can I deal with where their boundary lies? And if you can't, maybe that's not the person for you.
Well, and I always tell my people, the boundary that the person gets mad at the most is the one that you need to keep.
Yeah. And people get upset because it makes them uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
People get upset because now I'm being held accountable for something that I'm doing to you. And my thing is always, because boundaries is something we talk about in therapy every day.
All the time.
Sun up to sundown. The boundaries are for you. Your job is to express them and uphold them. You don't have to convince anybody that they're important. You don't have to convince anybody that they're necessary. You just need to make sure you uphold them. Everybody else will kind of fall by the wayside. Whoever is going to be in your life is going to be in your life. And this is not just romantic relationships. This is all relationships.
And one thing that when I'm talking with specifically about boundaries with clients is that one thing I tell them is that setting the boundary is the easy part. Everyone seems to think that telling a person that I don't appreciate the way you talk to me or telling someone that you can't treat me this way, that's the hard part. The hard piece is when you say, okay, I don't like this and I would prefer this alternate behavior. And then that person starts to test you.
Yeah.
And are you going to do the thing that you said you were going to do? So if you put the hard line in the sand and say, well, if you do this, then I'm leaving. Or if you do this, then I quit. Okay, well, when that person comes to test you, are you going to do that thing? Because if you don't, you're going to lose credibility.
And it's really difficult for adults when it's a spousal type of situation because it's like, well, he's a grown person or she's a grown person. How can I follow through with it? Well, and that's why when I tell them, don't start off with boundaries you can't follow through with.
Yeah.
And again, I'll just use one of my populations. If you know that you can't leave your spouse because if they drink or use substances, if you know you're not at that point to divorce them or leave them, then don't use that as the boundary.
Yeah. Especially when you're in therapy, we're not judging you. We're going off of your goals, and our job is to make sure you reach them in a healthy fashion. So it's a judgment-free zone, but don't tell me what your goal is and then you want me to hold you accountable and you get upset when I have to hold you accountable to that. Because
the most basic boundary a person can use is the word no.
It's a complete
is
sentence.
A complete Stop taking my sentences.
We synced. We all synced.
Yes, but I do agree with you, Dr. Wall.
Yeah. I think it's also important to realize the boundaries are going to challenge you.
Oh, God.
Because let's just be honest. Most people who don't have good boundaries tend to be people pleasers. And I'm speaking from experience because I'm a people pleaser.
Or control freaks.
That
would be the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah. You have to figure out what's going to work for you and what's not. Like that. I mean, that's just what it boils down to. You can't show up in the world and expect to have a genuine relationship with anybody if you don't know you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. We teach our clients all the time that you teach people how to treat you.
Yes.
And when you can have those boundaries, you are letting people know that you have an opinion, and that opinion may be different from theirs, and that's okay. But you still respect one another enough to still be able to, coexist with each other, have a relationship with each other, be friends with each other, whatever that relationship is.
I think that's something hard for people to understand, though, that I taught this person that this negative behavior was okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's a lot to wrap your mind around.
Yeah.
It is, because when the reality sets in and you realize that you've been with a person for, I'll just say 5 years, and I've taught you that you can overstep my boundaries at any time that you want to, and now I've got to go back and change that. That's one, it's a hard pill to swallow, because you, like you said, you allow that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then now there's going to be even more friction because I'm changing it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's because we like to externalize. We like to put the responsibility, how we call it, locus of responsibility, as an external. So this other person is more responsible for the treatment that I've received than I am responsible for the treatment that I've received. Now, we all know that you can't control someone else's behavior or control how they act, but you can control your own response and your own perception of whatever this event was. And knowing that I always had the control.
Yeah. You control what you allow to take place in your life. There are once you become an adult, there are very few situations where you have no choice. As a kid, it's a little bit different, because most homes are not set up to give children voices. Let's just be honest. It's not. Consent and things like that are not taught until something bad happens. So as an adult, though, that's on me. So if I'm in a bad situation, if I'm in a toxic situation, it's because I have not done what I needed to do for myself.
So the thing is, you have to know your truth. Expressing your truth and accepting it allows you to be able to live a scattered, free life. You can live outside of other people's boundaries, but within your own boundaries.
I like that.
It's a good way to put it. It is, because all of these different things is going to help everybody conceptualize it in a different way, because it's not one right way to look at it.
Right.
So that's good that we're giving all these different examples. Something that I definitely wanted to bring up is the different types of boundaries.
Oh yeah.
Because I don't think people realize, it's not just like, one boundary.
Yeah.
So some of the boundaries that we typically deal with in session, it could be couples, individuals, whatever. Physical boundaries, intellectual boundaries, emotional boundaries, sexual boundaries, material boundaries, time boundaries. And I also normally tell people to look at energy.
Oh, I'm a big, huge person about energy.
Like how much you're outputting to the things that you're connected to. That's extremely important one, because we don't realize that we give a lot of ourselves, and sometimes we're on E.
Oh, wow. Well, you want to go down the list?
We definitely can.
Okay.
So the first one that I mentioned was physical boundaries, and that's going to refer to your personal space and physical touch.
I think this one is hard for people whose love language is
Physical touch.
physical touch.
Yeah.
Why y'all gotta talk about me like that?
Especially if you're with somebody who's more like a acts of service person.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess we probably should just explain what that is for individuals that don't know what the 5 love languages are.
Yeah.
Because we're just throwing the term out there, and it's like, what are y'all talking about? So
Gary Chapman.
Thank you. I was about to say Gottman, and I was like, nope, that's not right. He has a concept called the 5 love languages, and they are words of affirmation. So this would be things like, I love you, thank you, I appreciate you, you mean the world to me. Anything that builds up the person using words. One of the next ones is gift giving and receiving. So of course this is buying flowers or taking someone on a trip, doing things for somebody, presenting them with some present. You have physical touch, which is hugs, kisses,
holding
affection,
hands,
holding hands,
affection,
putting your feet on people,
right,
whatever.
What else? Acts of service. So this is doing something for somebody. Washing the dishes for your wife, or
putting gas in the car.
Yeah, making lunch, washing the car, going to put gas in it, things like that. And then quality time. So it's almost like a combination of a couple of them, but this is more, I just want to be in your presence. I love doing things together. This may be like going on a bike ride or a hike or just sitting on the couch watching Netflix. I just want to be in your presence. So just your quick Psych 101 lesson on the 5 love languages. So we were talking about physical touch?
Yeah.
No,
physical boundaries.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying, that I think this one would be difficult for somebody that is a physical touch love language person. Because if they're with somebody that is not, then, they may be violating that other person's like, ooh, I kind of draw up and like, oh, please stop. You're doing too much, or you're being clingy. Well, because I've had some clients that speak like they really have a recoil.
It's like cringe.
Yeah.
When they feel overwhelmed or like they're being smothered.
Yeah. I mean, I've dated somebody like that. I'm going to be honest. Well, my love languages are they're a triple tie. So they're actually quality time, physical touch, words of affirmation. And I don't like to be like built up in words of affirmation. I just like, don't talk to me crazy. Gotcha. Type of thing. I don't like that. Sort of thing. But he was very like acts of service and gift giving. I have a 1 and a 0 in those. So that was a struggle for me, and it was a struggle for him. I honestly think he probably had a little Asperger's, so that made sense why he was like that. And so we struggled for a major part of our relationship because we were so polar opposite, but also because he would never tell me what his physical boundaries were. Y'all know I'm the queen of wanting to give y'all hugs and stuff like that. And, Dr. Strickland, did not want hugs at first, but she got to get them now. It doesn't matter. But that's is one way that I show love. And so I think when you have those differences, you have to effectively communicate. Because sometimes people's boundaries are not because they're just like, oh my God, I don't want to do that. It's because maybe there's a trauma there.
Right. Right. And if you have that conversation with them, and you all understand each other's love language, you can begin to, it may not be something that you just love to, to do, but you will accept it because that's that person's, because you do have a giving and a receiving love language.
Yes.
Yeah. It's about finding that middle ground.
Yes.
It can take some time, like you were saying, Dr. Wall, that if over time, the more you communicate and the more you learn about one another, you can find that happy middle where, okay, well, you can't hug me for 45 minutes straight,
but I'll hold your hand.
A cool minute. I'm good.
Yeah. Another example, because I was talking about this the other day, is when you're in line at the grocery store. Now, most of us, we're not in line no more because it's COVID. And somebody be right up behind you. And I'm like, do you not see my body right here? I put my basket behind me so people can
I'm the queen of asking, can you see me? Am I dead? I will ask the question real quick because you're too close. Give me 50 feet.
Yes. I know we talk about energy.
Yes.
It's like you can feel it radiating behind you. Like, please back up.
I'm like, why are you so close to my person? So that's a definite general physical boundary right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The next one is intellectual boundaries, and that refers to your thoughts and your ideas. You want to make sure that you're respectful of how other people think about things. You don't have to agree at all,
That's true.
but there's no reason that you have to put them down in order for yourself to be built up.
This is like the complete polar opposite of social media.
Say that.
Good point.
You know, it's like social media is almost, I mean, it was built for coming together, but it has morphed into this, well, my idea is better than your idea, and my beliefs are more important than your beliefs, and no one wants to hear anyone with any kind of opposing opinion.
It's a very American way to look at life. There's not one way to do things. Like the old saying, there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Yep.
It's more than one way to think. It's more than one way to show up in the world, be, live, do. And we're in a society where it's like, no, it must be this way. Who made that rule?
Well, the thing is, I feel like if we all collectively took the thoughts and the opinion, well, not opinions, no, the thoughts of everybody, we would learn a lot of things. And we would be able to expand how we see things, how we look at things, how we communicate things. Like if we would learn how to be respectful of how Dr. Strickland will explain something, or how Dr. Wall will explain something, and how Dr. Jones, and we have all of these different ideas, and we can come up with one big old just genius.
You become more well-rounded.
Yes.
Yeah.
Instead of one-dimensional. I think that is something that we suffer from a lot. We're not very dimensional. Like everybody always talks about, being woke and all that kind of stuff. And I think most people are not. Most people are sleepwalking.
Sheeple.
Yeah, that. And so this is one of those areas where if you find yourself being in such opposition of what somebody else says because it affects your core beliefs and things like that, then maybe you need to check yourself, because what they think and believe has nothing to do with you.
That is true.
What other people think about you is none of your business.
I can't tell you how many times I say that in a week. You don't live in other people's heads.
No.
And be glad that you don't.
Oh, Lord, please.
Because you'll be frightened, appalled, and probably ashamed if you lived in someone else's head and you knew all of the things that they thought about you and what they thought about the world.
Yeah.
It's a blessing that, that what women want and what men want is not a real concept.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, that's not a superpower that I would personally want, to be able to read people's minds and thought. Keep that to yourself.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we got to get
And
off
we're
that one.
therapists. Yeah. And that's all we do is jump in people's minds all day. But I don't want to know what's really, really
Right.
floating around in there.
And,
Give
and
me
Everybody be in the hospital somewhere.
yes. Yes.
Yeah.
You would definitely be like, yeah, Dr. Jones don't need to be no therapist.
None of us would. Oh, goodness. The next one is emotional boundaries, and that refers to a person's feelings, which people get stepped on all the time in this area.
And I think it's because a lot of us do not take the time to heal. One of the things that I tell, like when I see couples, is that if you're going to terminate a relationship and then take the person back before there has been any change, you should have just stayed in the relationship, because no, you're bound. You still haven't allowed your heart, one, to heal and feel safe, and they still haven't made any changes. So you healed, and they gonna do the damage again.
Yep. Another way that emotional boundary shows up is how you share your personal information to people.
Yes.
Do you share everything, or do you have a boundary there? I have a client right now who we are really trying to get this area of her life together, because she has an enmeshed relationship with her mother.
Mm-hmm.
And it is wreaking havoc in all other areas of her relationship because she just word vomits to her mother every single day. And her mother knows so much that she can just reach out to anybody in her life that she's never met before.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, no, that's not appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you shouldn't be feeling the way you feel if your mother was to reach out to somebody who you love. That's telling you that's a betrayal. That means your boundary has been crossed.
Right.
So that's another way that people tend to show up and cross your emotional boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would say another way people cross your emotional boundaries is trying to tell you how you feel.
Oh,
You better say that again.
I can't stand that. Ooh, ooh.
Like, well, you're angry. No, I'm not. I'm not angry.
But I'm about to be.
Right?
Exactly.
You don't want to see me when I'm angry. And people do that a lot. They assume based off, they either project what they're actually feeling onto you, or they don't have a good gauge on what actual emotion is being felt. Because a lot of times we don't have emotional words. We don't grow up learning the difference between rage and upset or annoyed. We just say,
or hurt or anger.
Right. We just say anger. I'm angry. I'm mad. And it's like, well, okay, but what's underneath all of that? There's something else that's there that went unresolved.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
Oh, most definitely. The one thing I can't stand is when someone tries to tell me that I'm not feeling the way that I'm feeling. And so then I say, no, I am feeling that way.
But you can't be.
But girl, yes, but you can't. How can I not be? How are you going to tell me how I'm feeling?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Again, we don't live in other people's heads.
Exactly.
No, not at all. I think the opposite end of that for people who struggle with emotional boundaries is that they're very shut off. And they seem very cold. They don't let anything out at all. In therapy wise and personal life, I tend to see that in a lot of Black men because it's not okay to have feelings. And so that's telling me that your emotional boundaries are not in the correct place, because you would know that having emotional intelligence is kind of important to life.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that when we were actually having sessions in office, face to face, my second session with my clients was for me to give them a feeling sheet. I already know people's emotional vocabulary is very limited.
It is.
Happy, sad, angry, scared. That's about as much.
Anxious.
And anxious. Because
And that's
kind of
recent.
I was like, that's kind of the
Yeah.
word of the day now. You know, that's really about it.
And so I tell them, look, I as we're working on what's going on with you, I need to be able to have or understand what other emotions feel like for you and look like on you. And I need you to know that.
If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's certain tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM.
And one thing that I also do, especially when I'm working with my male clients, is working with them on the difference between feeling and thought. Because in American I can only speak for American, dialect. We tend to say, I feel like, and then we insert some action or thought. So I feel like you trying to say something funny to me. Well, that's not a feeling.
That's a thought.
That's a thought.
You believe that. You know what I'm saying?
I believe.
Yeah. So we try to talk about, okay, so when you say I feel, a feeling word needs to come behind that. So I feel disappointed, or I feel rejected, or I feel elated, or I feel
Content.
content, peaceful.
There's hundreds of emotions, y'all.
Yes.
Hundreds.
And you can Google them. Get Google feelings words.
Yeah. I also try to teach them the difference between the low, medium, and high versions of all of those words.
Yes, me too.
Because, like a little earlier, I was saying the difference between rage and annoyed. That is two completely different ends of the spectrum. They have the same umbrella, but they are not the same feeling. They don't come with the same level of intensity, the same physical sensations
at all. And that's something that I have too. I have a, we'll just call it a color wheel, but it's an emotion wheel, and it has different colors on it, and different emotions are in each category, and you see how they link up together, and if these two link up, then it means that you'll probably have this emotion. So it's kind of a flow chart almost for you to be able to figure it out, because you'd be surprised how many people come to therapy and they have no connection to their emotions, and they're like, I don't know what I feel. And then we have to go physically. So physically, what is your body doing?
And that's what I was going to say. I including with the levels, I also try to get them to get in contact with the physical symptoms or physical feeling symptoms.
You said it right.
That they're having.
Yeah, absolutely. It all goes together.
Yeah.
Mind, body, and soul.
Yeah.
Stop trying to separate it, because that's weird.
Weird flex, but okay.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of weird flexes, the next one is sexual boundaries.
That was a good segue.
Yes.
I do that. That refers to your emotional, intellectual, and physical aspects of sexuality. And this is a huge one, because people don't really realize what sexual boundaries look like until they get a lot older, and then they realize how few sexual boundaries they had from childhood on up. And I can go back, because my mom is a survivor of trauma, and so I remember being really small and we being in our dining room, and my mom would teach me how to sit down in these little white and brown chairs I used to have and say, okay, cross your legs like this, tuck your feet like this, because my mom was really big on, she didn't want what happened to her to ever happen to me. So I was very much aware of my sexuality at a young age, and in a healthy way, not in a unhealthy way. Like, I wasn't fearful or anything like that, but my mom was very in tune with how she didn't feel that way when she was a kid. So it showed up as me being very body positive, and I guess that's probably why I ended up becoming a sex therapist.
That's a good point.
That is a good point. But I agree with you. I don't think sex is, for us to claim to be such a sexually open nation, we're such a prudish country. So we don't learn a lot of things about sexual health and how to understand, like, when you're being coerced or when you are being, forced.
Yeah.
We have these really weird and archaic views of men, women, and sexuality in whatever form that's going to take.
Yeah. Like a prime example of that is, if you're having a makeout session. Okay. I like to make out. Say you're having a makeout session and things are getting a little hot and heavy, and you're like, no, that's not what I really want to do tonight. It was just supposed to be Netflix and make out, not Netflix and go all the way. And you're like, no, I'm cool. And then the guy is like, you want to. That's coercion. How about I said what I said and I meant what I meant?
Yeah.
And we have a lot of clients that experience that, and they will go ahead and go
ahead and do it. And that's actually how a lot of date sexual assault occurs, because they're like, well, I
didn't feel like I could say no.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I could say no, even though when you're looking at it from the outside, were they in a specific harm's way? No. Physically, they were not technically in harm's way, but they were in emotional harm's way. And so whatever relationship they had with that person, they didn't want to mess that up. They put that person's feelings and beliefs ahead of theirs.
And that's how your boundaries were crossed.
You went right in my head and took that thought and just walked right in there.
Yeah, it's unwanted. Anytime there's an unwanted sexual touch, pressure to engage in sexual acts, any leering or sexual comments, like it's like you, dude or a girl, because I've seen both sides. Do you not have control over yourself?
Right.
And so if you've been in that type of situation, don't think that just because that happened to you, you're the only one with poor boundaries. The other person also has poor boundaries.
Yeah, they're on opposite ends of the spectrum, but they're both bad boundaries.
Yeah, you have a more overt end and a covert end.
Definitely.
Wow.
Well, we're gonna get off of that one, 'cause Lord.
Yeah, that one can get deep.
Yeah.
And we all be over here hot. So let me not go down there too far. The next one is material boundaries. And this is going to refer to like money and possessions. Like the thing that always pops up in my head is if you grew up with a bunch of siblings or cousins and they always taking your stuff and in your stuff. Like that's a humorous one that pops up. 'Cause I know we had like summers where all the cousins would come, everybody was there, and you could never find the stuff that was yours. It'll be mixed up. It's in their bag, your stuff over here. So that's like a humorous way to look at the material boundaries.
That makes me think about college.
That was the first thing that popped in my head too. My college roommate used to wear my clothes. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And she would wear my coat. So I was dating somebody at the time that lived in Austin. And I went to school in Nacogdoches, which is about 4 hours from Austin. So she would wear my clothes when I would go visit him on the weekend. And I remember one time I came back to the dorm and there was a shirt of mine that was hanging over the, because our beds were stacked. So one of my shirts was hanging over the side of the bed. And I was like, I don't remember wearing that shirt before I left. And it was soaking wet. So I was like, okay, of course, that means I definitely didn't wear it. And I'm like, this blah, 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 blah has been wearing my clothes.
We would have been in there fighting.
Girl, I had to start locking my closet after that.
Oh, wow.
That's ridiculous. You know what I mean? I mean, you got to do what you got to do, but it shouldn't have to get to that level.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, I have brothers. So when you have brothers, you just, especially when it comes to food. Now, granted, of course, the other stuff like clothes and stuff like that, I didn't have to worry about. But food, you know, boys eat. I mean, even when I go home to this day, like we'll go to this restaurant called Arigatos. Well, my cousin them call it Table, but it's Arigatos. It's Japanese.
Okay.
And so the first day I remember I went, or first time I went, and I had leftovers. And I knew my brother was going to eat it. So I was like, I was preparing myself. I did not get my taste buds ready to have it the next day. And he did. He ate it. So,
Oh, no.
So the next time, anytime we go, I just make sure I get extra and I say, hey, bro, it's some food in there
That's
for
yours.
you. Uh-huh.
Don't touch mine. I have 473 pieces of rice in there.
And 5 shrimp and 6 pieces of steak.
My brother will do that. So when I drink if I have a soda, like I'll drink like half of it and then put the other half in the fridge, and it burns him up because it may be a week before I come back to that other half of my soda.
Do that at the office.
But it's yours.
Right. And he'll
Don't
be
touch
like,
my stuff.
why won't you drink that soda already? And then one time he drank it and I went like you, I went back for it and I was like, he done drank the other half of my Mountain Dew.
She got a little bit of a soda addiction, in case y'all didn't know that.
But I have water beside me right now.
But y'all remember in the office we had a food bandit,
We
and
did.
all of us was in here like, touch my food again.
Yes.
Touch my food again. And for y'all that don't know, at this time we was doing like these huge potlucks and bringing food. Like I said, we a big old family, and everybody in our office at the time, for the most part, cooks. And I mean cooks. Like we have the Asian side, we have the Caribbean side, we got the traditional like soul food, Creole, like all that. So we was in here eating, getting fat and stuff, and like we would portion our stuff out. So it's like, now we got to start putting our names on stuff. That's what we got to do. Why my whole bottle gone?
Yeah.
Right. How you gonna eat my stuff and it's open?
So we ended up having to buy another refrigerator Is that why we bought the refrigerator? Because one of them we keep.
Because it was the drinks first.
Yeah. Yes. That's right.
Oh, man, memories. Jeez.
I forgot about that.
I did.
4 years of memories.
See, and look, we ended up having to set these boundaries about material things by getting another fridge and putting placards all over it that don't touch what ain't yours.
Yep. If it's in the black refrigerator, it's everybody's. If it's in the white one, no.
Yeah.
It's hilarious now, even though we don't really have that problem no more. But you see all this Dr. Wall, Dr. Strickland, or you see Dr. W, Dr. S, Dr. J, all throughout the refrigerator. But we be like, I brought this, go on and eat it. You want some? I ain't gonna eat it. Like it's hilarious.
Yeah.
I wanted to add with the material boundaries, the flip side of that is also when people pressure you to give them your stuff. Because that's something that I think is kind of left off, but it goes along with what we were saying with the sexual boundaries, that coercion.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about the other side of the pressure you into giving them your stuff.
Yeah. So for people that don't know, I work with a lot of people with developmental disabilities, so intellectual disability, and autism spectrum, things like that, and other various genetic chromosomal disorders. And that puts me in the mind of a lot of people that I hear when they go to Dayhab, that they have been pressured to give their money to another individual, or they feel like they're being pressured by staff, to sign documents that are not appropriate. They're being pressured to move somewhere, that they are, because they don't have as great of an understanding of subtlety and as great of an understanding of, contracts and all the abstract kind of concepts that they feel taken advantage of sometimes by the people around them.
It reminds me of my client's daughter, who luckily her mother advocates for her every day, because it was one of those classic neglect and fraud and mistreatment and taking her clothes, taking her food, taking her money, got her signed up on this. It was like I was listening to a case study out of the books that we used to read when we were in school. It's just sad it to be that type of person, to take advantage of somebody who needs you to protect them.
That's a low down dirty shame.
Ain't it? The next one is time, and I guess we can put time and energy together because they kind of go hand in hand. And so time boundaries refer to how a person uses their time, and to have healthy boundaries you must set aside time for the things that you need to do. But with that, since we're adding the energy, what are you expending during that time as well?
That puts me in the mind of something my husband said about me. He said, "Man, you go hard." He said, "I cannot talk about you." Right. I go hard in the paint. He was like, "You will not stop." So I can't remember what we were doing, and it was something we were doing in the yard outside. And I think I worked probably 5 or 6 hours straight. And he was like, "Did you take a break at all?" And I had to stop and think about it. Like, oh, did I? I was like, "Oh no, I didn't." And it's like, okay, that was a lot of energy. So I wasn't setting a boundary with myself,
That's important.
Which I was getting ready to key in on that. Something I've been talking about a lot with my clients is not necessarily other boundary, but self boundary.
Yes.
So, that's an example of, I didn't set a boundary with myself that I needed to take a break, rest, get something to drink, get something to eat, that you can't just go, boom, 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 boom. Because my mind frame is, I want to get it all done, then relax.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's how I am too.
Yeah.
That's how I set myself. I can go back to being a kid and thinking, okay, I need to bust out all this homework, and then I get to rest and go watch, Friday night TV and watch Steve Urkel. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's how I was always conditioned. And it wasn't that my mom or my grandparents forced me. I made these rules up and then messed around and couldn't maintain that once I got up into college and master's and doctorate degree, it becomes too much. You have to have so much flexibility when you go upper level education.
Yes.
Yeah. You really do.
Yes, you really do. I mean, I feel like I have spurts and I'll go hard. Well, the thing is, it depends on what it is. Because
Yeah,
for
definitely.
me,
I
for
agree.
work, it feels like for work, I'm always, because we have so many businesses and things that we're trying to do and making money moves and, you know,
And
things.
you're passionate about
And
it.
yeah, exactly. And so when it comes to that, I'm constantly going. But when I get home, only thing I really try to make sure I do is clean my house, because y'all know I can't stand dirty. I try to make sure I clean my house so I can relax. And because my significant other is on the road a lot, and especially because of COVID, I definitely try to make sure
Yeah.
I wash clothes and wash and, you know,
Get everything
disinfect, you
disinfected.
know. And so that can be tedious, but I do know now, because I'm the oldest, I have to sit myself down sometimes.
I think we all
was that
gotta do
slight
it.
shade toward the two of us?
You know, I don't really. Just because you getting up there don't mean, you know.
I know, so I have to make sure, since I'm, you know,
No,
Try to put
Upper.
us in our place.
I'm upper.
she doing the most is what it is. What do y'all feel is the boundary that y'all struggle with the most?
I definitely think one of the biggest ones that I struggle with is the time and energy, because I will I can become hyper focused on something,
Yeah.
and then it will be as if everything else kind of fades to the background. Like, I'm a very one at a time type person.
Gotcha.
You know, if I'm doing, like right now, while I'm doing the podcast, like that's where my mind is at.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm cleaning, then I'm cleaning, and that's all I want to do. I don't want to do nothing else. I don't want,
Yeah.
and I want to finish it. If I'm watching Netflix and I don't want to do nothing else, I want to watch Netflix. Don't bother me. This is where I'm at. So I think I could work on kind of spreading myself out a little bit more evenly versus being so one track minded on certain things.
Gotcha.
And I think I'm very opposite. Because I do believe mine is the time as well. But I feel like I'm ADHD sometimes, because I'm always doing multiple things. Like, I will start cleaning the bathroom and then I'm like, oh, I need to vacuum, and I'll go vacuum, finish that and come back. But I do go back to the
Yeah.
task. And while I'm doing, cleaning the bathroom, I started a load of clothes, and I'm running the dishwater, because I do not run dishes in the dishwasher. I'm running.
And I swear by the dishwasher.
See, and so I feel like for me, and even when I sit down and watch TV, I'm playing a game on my phone. I'm looking at trying to catch up on social medias, because I don't go on it, so I'm trying to catch up on it, and things like that. So I'm a multitasker, and I have it seems like, and maybe that's why it feels like I'm always on the go,
Yeah.
because I'm always doing something.
The funny thing is that both of those things are draining.
Yes.
Both. I would say I probably have two, and it would be energy, because I like to move in excellence. I want to make sure that I'm showing up the way that I want to be seen and the way people need me. And because I have giver and rescuer tattooed on my forehead, I have to make sure that I'm paying attention to that, because it's easy for me to overextend and realize that I'm not getting anything in return. And then I think the next one would be the emotional boundaries. Me being a dang empath, I have to really be mindful of that, because I'm such a loving person. That's just, I love to love on people. And I realize as I've gotten older that most people can't handle my level of love. And that's heartbreaking to me. So I have to pull it back a little bit, so that I'm not overextending myself to try to fill them up when I'm not getting anything.
And see, I think I'm kind of the opposite on that one, on the emotional end, because I become so hyper focused on one thing. It can feel like the people in my life feel like I don't care.
Okay.
Because I may go 2 or 3 weeks without calling you. You know,
Got you.
because I'm so focused on what's in my own head, on what I want to accomplish and where I'm trying to go and what I need to do. And, you know, it's not that I don't love you, and it's not that I don't want to talk to you. Because when I do, again, once I'm on the phone with you or I'm all about you. Mm-hmm. And then all that other stuff that I was doing fades again to the background.
Yeah.
But until sometimes, like, I pre-program text messages in my phone.
Ain't
Oh, I
nothing,
remember.
And I let
told me
them
that.
program them to send, to force me to make sure that I'm still being very present in some of my relationships. So the second we finish texting,
Yeah.
I've already sent one for like 2 weeks from now to say, hey, how you doing? And then when you
Yeah.
respond back, I'm like, oh, dang.
But see, that's healthy.
Yeah.
You know, I always tell people, know what your strengths are and understand your weaknesses,
Yeah.
because your weaknesses are not meant to be built up to your strengths. They are meant for you to learn how to cope and navigate them. Your strengths are your strengths. So if you know that you got that planning thing on lock and you that's what you do.
Oh yeah. I know one friend in particular that I do this with all the time. Because I know that if I don't, because we don't see each other every day, and you know, it's rare that we get a chance to see each other, that, you know, it becomes an out of sight, out of mind thing. So I know I have to, you know, it's not a forced thing because I want this relationship.
Yeah.
But again, I'm here immersed in my current
world.
surround. Yeah. So I have to make sure that, so that I can keep that, I don't know what word I want to insert there, but keep that energy, level of commitment, bond. Yeah. Keep that going, that I'm setting myself up to be successful in that.
Yeah. That's
I
good.
think go ahead.
Nope. You go ahead.
I think with me, with the emotional boundaries, now this is me not having anyone to tell me anything different. I think I'm balanced. I think, because I spend time, and you know what? I think it's because a lot of my friends, I think Dr. Wall and I are the last to not be married, but a lot of my friends are married. So I give them their space. And when they want to hang out, I just let them call me. Like we may text and stuff like that. And I probably would, I guess for me, I would probably like to see my friends and hang out with my friends that are married more. But I understand they have a husband. So it's not like they can just, you know, hang out like that,
all the time.
all the time like that.
Yeah.
Well, something just to add to the boundary types is also what the boundaries can look like as far as healthiness, just so that the listeners have this. And you have 3 different versions of it. You have rigid, and rigid is going to be very strict, it has to be this way. This is the only way we're going to do it, period. You know, the other one is going to be porous, and those are the people who, like, the wind can blow them and their boundary changes. So it's all over the place. What, who, when, like there's no stability to it. But ultimately what you want to get to is healthy boundaries, and what that looks like for each person is different.
Something that I wanted to maybe end on was what expectations once you start setting your boundaries. So one thing that I talk about a lot with my clients is that once you start to set boundaries, you may start to see that the people around you are going to begin responding in some ways that are either unbecoming, unlike them, because they are not used to you behaving in this new way. So they may unintentionally start to create issues to, in essence, force you to remain the same. You know, so they may pick an argument with you or say little snide comments on like, oh, you acting funny lately.
You brand new?
Yeah, you acting brand new. You showing out for your little friends. You know, things like that. That as you start to become more firm in who you are and how you see the world, and being able to, like we've been talking about, create those, you know, visible guidelines for people, that they may not be ready for that. So as you're setting, just be prepared that, you know, you may start to see some changes and you may lose some people.
Yeah. Some tips, and I'm just going to list them just because we've already mentioned some of them, are to know your limits, know your values, listen to your emotions, have self-respect, have respect for others, Be assertive. And I think this is one of the most important ones. Consider the long view.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it may feel uncomfortable to set the boundary, but how beneficial is it going to be in the long run?
Absolutely.
Remember, at some point, you have to come into your own and know what your truth is.
Yeah. And as we go ahead. I was going to say, as we close it out, I just want to leave us with a little quote. Pay attention when people react with anger and hostility to your boundaries. You have found the edge where their respect for you ends.
Must be this volume control.
So, okay, interns, process your notes. Be sure to catch us next session and find us on all major platforms at The Recycled Podcast.
If you're a new intern, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share.
Thanks for listening. And remember, we are shifting and reshaping our psyche through healing conversations and connections, one discussion at a time.